Donald Trump firing back at what he calls the New York Times lame hit piece on his past relationships with women. In a flurry of tweets over the past 24 hours, he says in part, put him up, the failing New York Times wrote yet another hit piece on me. All are impressed with how nicely I have treated women. They found nothing, a joke. And the New York Times is so dishonest, their hit piece cover story on me yesterday was just blown up by Roanne Brewer, who said it was a lie. That tweet followed his former girlfriend, Roanne, who's featured in the Times cover story, telling Fox and Friends the newspaper got it all wrong. Here she is.
The New York Times told us several times that they would make sure that my story that I was telling came across. They promised several times that they would do it accurately. They told me several times, and my manager several times, that it would not be a hit piece, and that my story would come across the way that I was telling it, and honestly, and it absolutely was not.
What did they get wrong?
Well, they did take quotes from what I said, and they put...
She's still talking. I'm about to be Captain Obvious right now. Donald Trump and his treatment of women on the front page of the New York Times. Megan, your thoughts?
Who would have seen this coming? I mean, listen, this is one of the complexities of Donald Trump, is if you read the Times piece all the way through, they reach that same conclusion, which is it's a complex analysis. It's not a total hit piece on him, like Trump sucks and he doesn't like women. They also talk about women that he's promoted and helped professionally. They highlight Barbara Rez, who, you know, he made the head of construction at a time when no women had those positions, to the consternation of his own father, who was saying, what the hell are you doing? Why, you know, a woman? But that doesn't excuse all of the other stuff he said. He's, of course, used language about women that is absolutely diminishing, whether this woman here felt diminished or not.
Yeah, you know what's interesting, Melissa, as you read the article and you hear this woman, we've heard other women come forward, she calls Trump a gentleman, and we hear that kind of language from women all the time. As Megan says, it's complicated, but it's also many-faceted. I mean, there are people who have great relationships with him. They dated for a while, he and this woman.
And here's the problem for the New York Times. So when you lay out your case like this and you back it up with evidence, you better be sure that every piece is good. And I always say never exaggerate, don't pile on more than you need, because you come up with the one piece that doesn't work out like this, and it undermines your whole entire story, and it takes apart your whole point, because now the story becomes, here's this woman coming out here saying, that's not what I told them at all. I mean, look, obviously there's a lot of evidence that Donald Trump has said and perhaps done things that aren't great for women. It kind of cuts both ways, but I think a lot of women are saying, I'm not voting for him for husband. I'm voting for him for president.
Well,
not the same thing. I wouldn't marry him.
But let me ask you about that. Does it matter if we have a presidential candidate or a president who doesn't speak up about women respectfully or treat all women respectfully?
I don't love it, of course, but at the same time, I'm so worried about the economy and I'm so worried about national security. I feel like those things are first, and there's stuff I don't like about each and every candidate. I mean, there's things that I would change about all of them. I don't believe that he has a lot of respect for women in general at all. I mean, I think there's enough evidence that he doesn't.
That Reince Priebus, the head of the RNC, is making. I know you're going to throw to some sound of him in a second, Harris, but he's basically saying, I don't think that this angry electorate that is supporting Donald Trump cares about things that did or didn't happen 30 years ago.
Let's watch it real quickly and then we'll talk about it.
These are things that he's going to have to answer for, but I also think they're things from many years ago, and I think that, you know, as Christians judging each other, I think is problematic. I don't think Donald Trump and his personal life is something that people are looking at and saying, well, I'm surprised that he's had girlfriends in the past. That's not what people look at Donald Trump for. And so I think the traditional playbook and analysis really don't apply.
Yeah, it's an interesting point.
And his point, Doug, is that people in this economy, they care more about their spouse or their son or daughter getting a job in what is still arguably a weak economy with stagnant growth.
Right. I think that this article on Trump, he does have a woman problem, though, and I think this article on Trump actually is going to help him. We're already in this magical campaign season where everything good, bad, or indifferent works to his advantage. And here, to your point, there was a missed thing here. So we now have this woman who is supposed to be speaking out against him is now out there calling him a gentleman. And it's like that scene in A Few Good Men courtroom where, like, even the judge is now calling the witness an expert, you know. And so
right.
all he needed was one toehold in this piece. The New York Times is already an easy target for a counterpunch by a GOP candidate. And I think he's going to be able to turn this into a weapon for him in this campaign to get women back on his side. These people are overreaching, and anytime you get overreach in a piece like this, there is a backlash against it. And granted, it's not overreach. I know a number of people came out and were legitimate sources in this.
Right.
But he just needs one. He's so effective at taking that one thing and spinning it around.
Well, and it makes you wonder if there might be another. Megan,
well, but just for the record, there are 8 women complaining on the record in the piece. 1 has spoken out.
I want to ask you about some comments that you made, I think earlier today was when I saw it, about Republican women may be warming a little bit to Donald Trump. Tell me what you're talking about there.
Well, I think the polls back in March were terrible for Trump, and we haven't seen a massive poll like we saw from U.S. I think it was Washington Post, ABC News. Since then, where he had a 72% disapproval rating among American women, and about half of Republican women at the time disliked Trump. But he's done better with Republican women in the primaries that have taken place since then. So he's gotten above his 50% with Republican women in the various states in which he's won. Whether that translates into a general election victory with women is a very different question. I mean, right now, Trump is definitely not on track to win the women of America. He's on track to win the men. So the question is whether he can get together enough men, in particular white men, to vote for him to make up for the deficit he's now suffering with women. And if he cannot, he's going to need to do something to win those women over between now and November.
All right.